Now, Joining me now, Texas Democratic Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, the sponsor of the Juneteenth legislation in the House. Congresswoman, you gavelled this overwhelmingly bipartisan vote in the House last night. The vote was 415 to 14. Talk a little bit about the significance for you, for your home state of Texas, and of course, for our nation, who has, this is a remarkable day in our history that will only be formally acknowledged starting this weekend.
Casey, thank you for having me this afternoon. You cannot imagine the moment that gavel came down. I really brought it down for those who do not live. This was so significant because I have heard from people across the country, and it reckoned with the fact that 250,000 people were held as property for 2.5 more years. And frankly, I believe the affirmation of this legislation, this holiday, 48 years since the last federal holiday was established, really indicated that the original sin of this nation was acknowledged, that America can begin to talk about it in a unified manner, and that we accepted the words of Abraham Lincoln, "A nation divided against itself cannot stand." Last night, Republicans and Democrats, 415, voted to make Juneteenth a national holiday. In Texas, we have a lot of fun. We have great celebrations, but it is sober and somber and real, and Americans will have that opportunity to experience that in a federal holiday.
So, Congresswoman, let's talk about another critical civil rights question at hand today and this year, and that's voting rights, which is really a fundamental existential question for so many people. We saw Senator Joe Manchin circulating a list of demands he wants to change the For the People Act, and says these are things he would compromise on. He does want to make Election Day a public holiday and ban partisan gerrymandering, but he'd use a computer formula to do that. He also wants to require voter ID and allow governments to use different databases to remove people from the rolls. We've already heard from Minority Leader McConnell on this. He calls the compromise rotten. Where do you stand on what Joe Manchin is suggesting?
Well, I have worked on voting rights for 2 decades plus. The work that we did last night for Juneteenth was bipartisan, and it was teamwork. My team members in the Senate, Senator Cornyn and Senator Markey, and team members here in the House that were bipartisan. Here's where I stand. The Congressional Black Caucus, the conscience of this Congress, along with my other colleagues, know that yesterday was a start. It said to Republicans and Democrats, questions of race can be voted on and the American people will stand by you. I will listen to Joe Manchin because our agenda is to ensure that voting rights are passed. It is an absolute necessity. I was here for the reauthorization about a decade ago, and it was bipartisan. I know that H.R. 1 was written in part by John Lewis, the late John Lewis, because he knew what the infrastructure of voting needed to be. I'm pushing that. I'm pushing H.R. 4, the reauthorization of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. We must have it. I'm pushing the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. I'm pushing the Commission on Reparations. Yesterday was a start. We need to get in an engagement and discussion. And I would again say to the minority leader, it is sad when your legacy is a meeting in a restaurant in Washington to say that President Obama would have 1 term. Your desire to make sure that President Biden's agenda does not work. Why are you opposing America's unity? And so let him stand as an isolated person, and I'm willing to work. We are with Joe Manchin, the Democrats in the Senate, Republicans in the Senate, in the House, and we are ready to get the job done. That's what we have to do. That's what this affirmation of this holiday was. We voted on it. It was unified. It was bipartisan. Let's get working. We can't dwell on negative talk. We have to talk and lead on issues that will move us forward and move the ball forward for social justice and racial equity.
and of course, the last fight over a major federal holiday, MLK Day, which was an enormous lift to actually get done this much more quickly. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, thank you very much for your time today.